In today's video, we have lots to discuss, including some pretty big offseason NHL rumors involving the Pittsburgh Penguins. Could they make a big splash and go after a top free agent if he makes it there, like a Mitch Marner? Plus, is Erik Karlsson going to remain in Pittsburgh or will he be traded? We'll get the opinion of one Pittsburgh beat writer. Plus, big news in Montreal. Apparently, there's a possibility, rumors are swirling, that they're trying to bring over Ivan Demidov before the NHL season is over. Plus, a big update on the future of Sam Bennett. Where will he possibly end up if he hits free agency? Could he stay in Florida? Big news in a global series. Lots of NHL injury updates, a few signings, a big update as well regarding the potential full new team name for the Utah franchise as well. Plus, we also have a big update from Daily Faceoff talking about how power play opportunities are drastically down this season. We'll discuss all that. And could we see a U.S.-Russia hockey series? All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video, all kinds of news and some offseason speculation as well. First up, let's get into the news from the NHL today, confirming that the NHL Global Series will be once again heading to Sweden and will involve two teams with really prominent Swedish-born players at the moment, and that's Nashville and Pittsburgh. They'll be heading to Stockholm in November of 2025 with two games being played on the 14th and on the 16th. Of course, right now, the Predators feature a top Swedish player like a Filip Forsberg, where Pittsburgh currently has Rickard Rakell, Erik Karlsson. Lots of speculation about the future of Karlsson, whether or not he'll be there next year remains to be seen. We'll discuss that later in the video, but as of right now, some fairly big name Swedish players on those rosters. So, obviously, the NHL has done very well in Sweden with attendance and interest in the product. So, not shocked that they'll be heading back, and I'm sure we'll probably see other teams make to another European city sometime during the next campaign here as well. A bunch of updates around the league, including a few signings, roster updates for recalls and some injury stuff. The Buffalo Sabres today sent Isaac Rosen back to the American Hockey League, so he's sent down. The Rangers have confirmed that Arthur Kaliyev, who they picked up from the Los Angeles Kings earlier in the season, who we know has been out with an injury, that injury apparently is going to keep him out for the rest of the season. Even if the Rangers make the playoffs, at this point it doesn't look promising that he's going to be able to come back and play at all for the remainder of this season. So Arthur Kaliyev's season comes to an end. I know for a young player looking to get a fresh start in New York, he didn't really, get a ton of chance to really prove himself. He's battled a lot of injuries the past couple of years, and that's certainly been a deterrent for keeping him at the NHL level consistently. We'll see how things work out for him moving forward. The Sharks today recalled Luca Cagnoni. The Canucks also recalled Linus Karlsson as well. We also got an update, a fairly significant one at that, on the Dallas Stars and their star defenseman, Miro Heiskanen, who we know has been out with injury for some time. Obviously, his regular season we knew was likely over, but there was optimism that he could be back in the playoffs. The latest update suggests that he probably wouldn't be available when the playoffs start and may miss all of round one, might not be available unless the Stars advance and make it to at least the second round. So obviously, having to go through a whole playoff series without him will not be easy. Obviously, one of their top players, one of the big contributors on both ends of the ice. So that's a big blow for Dallas if that ends up being the case. A couple of signings as well. The Rangers today signed a promising prospect and his fourth-round pick from 2022, Noah Lava. He gets a 2-year ELC. The forward played most recently in college for the Colorado College. So he signs and will move to pro for the next couple of years. I know there's a lot of promise around his development the past couple of years, so the Rangers are happy to get him under contract. And the Columbus Blue Jackets have signed a very promising prospect as well, and that's goaltender Evan Gardner, who they selected last year, 60th overall in the 2024 NHL draft, gets his 3-year entry-level contract. Now, lots of speculation that we've seen in recent days here around what's the team name or the nickname going to be for the Utah franchise. Will it remain Utah Hockey Club? Will it go with the Mammoth or the Outlaws? We know it's been narrowed down. It sounds like Utah Yeti was the preferred name, of course. We know that went through the process of trying to get everything trademarked and copyright. And they ran into a bunch of issues with the Yeti drinkware company and could not figure things out to be able to proceed in that case. So on to option 2 it is, and they've had fans voting here. The belief is, according to one Utah reporter, is that the name Mammoth appears to be the successful name. We'll wait and see. Like I said the other day, Utah is in absolutely no hurry to announce and confirm this. I don't expect we'll hear anything during the regular season. I'm not sure at what point in the offseason they're going to make the announcement. Like I said, in the past, the way the draft was formatted, it would have been a perfect opportunity to make a big splash and announce it, show your jersey, trademarks, logos, all that stuff at that point in time. But where it's a different format this year, I don't know if they'll still go that route. They're going to want to make a big deal, make a big spectacle out of it. So I'm not sure. But right now, the Mammoth trademark has been extended, while the HC and the Outlaw one apparently has not been. So that's why people are rumored to be leaning towards Mammoth as being the name. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, it'll take some time before that gets confirmed, but that's the way things look here today. What's the future of Rick Tocchet as the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks? Will he be back next season? Will he not be? And it certainly seems like that's entirely up to him. Rick Tocchet, I think for the most part, has done a pretty good job as a coach in Vancouver. Clearly was acknowledged last year as the Jack Adams recipient winner after seeing a massive turnaround in Vancouver from the previous season. But of course, this year the team has taken a step back and really has had a lot of internal drama that it had to deal with. Ended up trading JT Miller. We know the whole deal with Elias Pettersson, where he's not been the same player. Obviously, even it's not just this year that he hasn't been the same player. It's been a while since he was a 100-point producing franchise centerman. But at the end of the day, it's not. There's a lot going on there. And Rick Tocchet, on his contract, when he first became the coach of the Canucks, there is a team option for next year. So it's not like he's without contract. It's not like it's going to expire. But the belief is that himself, he doesn't want to be like a lame duck coach. The team doesn't want him to be either. They want him to go into next year if he's going to continue with an extension. Obviously, Tocchet is the type of guy that, is he's all in. And when he's all in, he's all in. And right now, he's all in on the season. So believes that the team is ready to extend him. They're quite happy with the job he's done. But he is not ready himself to sit down and talk contract and get an extension worked out. Obviously, that may not happen to the end of the regular season. But certainly, if you look at what he wants to do, obviously lots of familiarity and a long relationship with the management crew there. So I believe that Tocchet, I think the odds are decent that he stays, but he needs to see a good plan in the future for that team to be what he hopes it can be. I mean, clearly, look at the franchise goaltender, Thatcher Demko. Suddenly, lots of question marks now about his future, the injuries he's dealt with, question marks around a franchise centerman, Elias Pettersson. You get Quinn Hughes is still a little ways away from needing a new contract, but the way everything has gone, is he going to stay? I think Tocchet will need, obviously probably want to be a part of the team's planning a little bit to see where things are at. But at this point, it's believed, like I said, that the team wants to sign him. He's the one that's kind of preferring to wait right now, take the wait and see approach, make sure that it's something that he wants to absolutely be all in and committed to, and we may not know his future until after their season comes to an end. Now, there's also an interesting update as well in the world, and this is going to sound political because it kind of is, but apparently we do know that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin had discussions today about a variety of topics, but apparently one of the topics that were discussed, which was, I believe, brought up by Putin, from my understanding, is a hockey series of Team USA playing against the Russian hockey club, which would be comprised of players most likely from the NHL and the KHL. The NHL did put out a statement saying that they had just basically heard about this and had no involvement in those discussions or weren't aware of anything, so certainly couldn't really talk about it much at all. But, obviously that's an interesting concept. Clearly, Trump, we know, was very much involved in praising Team USA in the Four Nation Face-Off tournament. Had a phone call with them on their championship game day against Team Canada. Ultimately, the Canadians won the tournament, but the U.S. had a great showing and were one goal away from being champs in that tournament, and we're certainly going to be looking to redeem themselves with the upcoming Winter Olympics. So curious to see if anything comes from that, but at this point, the NHL has no idea, and it was really just an idea that came up in casual discussions. Obviously, they had much bigger issues to talk about today. I'm sure the hockey talk didn't really get a whole lot of time and attention. And we'll see if we hear anything more about it. Speaking of which, belief is when it comes to the 2026 Winter Olympics next year, according to Pierre LeBrun of TSN, that we're going to kind of see the same sort of process for naming the teams and the rosters like we saw for the Four Nation tournament. So we'll expect the teams to probably name their first 6 skaters, likely sometime in the offseason, probably, I would suspect, probably in June, most likely, or the early part of July. We don't have a firm date here just yet, with the remaining part of the roster confirmed sometime before the end of December. So obviously it'd be a similar process. Now, as I mentioned as well, big story from Daily Faceoff and Frank Saravalli today. Some interesting data that I wanted to share with you here today and see what everybody thinks. Essentially, the main premise of the article was discussing the fact that NHL teams have had a significant reduction in power play opportunities during this year's regular season so far. They've had 747 fewer opportunities overall as a league compared to last year. Some teams themselves have had over 50 fewer chances, which is resulting in a 12% year-over-year drop in power play opportunities. So games are on pace at this rate if this continues. And as we know, the standard does seem to change as the season goes on and gets closer to the playoffs. Games are on pace for the lowest number of power play opportunities on a per-game basis in the history of the league. Now, of course, we know the NHL currently holding GM meetings right now. So the GMs are all together. Many of the reporters are down there in Florida covering these meetings. So it's an opportunity for some of these reporters and insiders to have discussions and get comments on various topics on their agenda and other topics from a variety of NHL GMs and executives. Saravalli did speak with the NHL Executive Vice President of Officials, Stephen Walcom, and he says that what they call their missed rate is not up. So the missed rate is basically what they determine when a referee does not make a call and should have, or I think to some degree they also measure when a call is made but maybe shouldn't have been, but that's, I believe, a separate topic, separate statistic. So the missed rate, so all, in case you don't know as well, NHL games are all reviewed by senior officials and referees are graded and scored upon their performance. That's how they determine who gets the chance to continue on to the playoffs. And as the playoffs go deeper and deeper, it's going to be the referees who get the best report cards, essentially. They get those opportunities. So with Walcom saying that the missed rate is not up, but apparently according to Saravalli, he would not necessarily share exactly where it's at or give them any data on that, just confirming that it's not any higher than years past. Certainly asking questions like, are the players playing a cleaner game? Is there adjustments that have been made and are getting fewer calls because there's actually fewer infractions? If the refs aren't missing it, then what is it? 78% of goals this year have been scored at an even strength stat, which is the highest in over 50 years, which is kind of crazy. It's not all bad if it is what it is, but just looking at the data, trying to figure out, Saravalli did speak to a few GMs for this story as well, and none of them felt like the game was being played cleaner, that wasn't the reason. Like Minnesota themselves, the Western Conference is even more heavy hit here in this case. The Eastern Conference has some teams that are down a substantial amount of power plays as well, but the Western teams are by far the highest, with Minnesota leading the way. They're down 60 power plays compared to this time last year. St. Louis down 56, Vegas 55, Chicago 49, LA 48. Meanwhile, the tops in the Eastern Conference is the Red Wings and the Flyers, both down 38 opportunities on the power play. So very, very interesting stat. Curious. I noticed myself lately watching games that I've seen some games with very few penalties, but I know when I'm watching it, I keep myself thinking and kind of saying like, oh, there's a missed call. Oh, they let that go. So to me, I'm surprised to hear that the miss rate is not up. Is the standard changing? What is it? I'm curious to see if they continue to look into this and see what happens. But let me know your thoughts on why the NHL has had so few penalties this year and why the power play opportunities are down in such dramatic fashion? And will it change going into the playoffs? We know the standard always seems to change when the season changes, so we'll see what happens. A couple of updates around the NHL, some rumors around offseason stuff. Sam Bennett, as we know, is apparently re-engaged with the Florida Panthers on a new contract, but there is, a lot of people around the NHL that believe if he is not signed before July 1st, doesn't mean he's leaving Florida, for one, but secondly, means he can speak to other teams before he makes his decision, and that he would be one of the most sought-after players on the open market. Now, Andy Strickland, an NHL reporter, has a podcast, works for Bally Sports, or used to work for Bally Sports in St. Louis. He's one of those guys as well that have had a lot of stuff to say about when it comes to Brady Tkachuk too, which has turned out to be completely false. So I don't know, but to take it for what it is. But he says that Sam Bennett's best interest is to remain in Florida and that he will not sign in Canada. He said he's not going to sign with the Leafs or any other Canadian team. Nothing against being in Canada. Obviously, he's an Ontario-born kid from the Toronto area. Grew up as one of the best buddies of Connor McDavid. They played a lot of minor hockey together. That's why there's been some speculation about, could he land in Edmonton? Could his hometown Leafs come calling? And the belief is that Toronto would have an extreme high level of interest, especially where they have Marner and Tavares on expiring deals. If one of those guys doesn't come back and they have even more cap space to work with than they might expect, that it would be even a bigger push to bring him in as, a guy with snarl and skill that they feel could be a big help to help them, reach their goals. So at the end of the day, we'll see what happens with Bennett. I do think that Florida is going to stand a good chance to get it done. If I had to pick, I said before, I think between Bennett and Ekblad, one of the two might end up being kind of like a cap casualty. I think Ekblad, to me, is more likely to be that guy. As soon as I brought in Seth Jones, my initial reaction was, well, that might be the end of Aaron Ekblad in Florida. We'll have to wait and see. If they're re-engaged now, that means obviously there's high interest on both sides to make it work. Florida has a no-state tax, which is a bit of an advantage, and he's been the best version of himself as a Panther. So I think I can't imagine he wants to leave, but at the same time, I'm sure he wants to get paid, and it really boils down to what Florida is going to offer him. So we'll see what happens on Sam Bennett's front. With Pittsburgh, I know athletic writer and for the beat writer for the Penguins, Josh Yohe, predicts that Erik Karlsson will be traded this offseason. He feels that Karlsson, not only will he be traded, but the Penguins won't be required to add a sweetener, and they may not even need a third team. Obviously, he does feel that they will need to retain salary. Clearly, a little bit of his income is already being held back by the Sharks, and if they retain further, executives around the NHL had told him previously that if they felt if the Penguins were to retain enough to bring his salary down to about $8 million, that they felt that a deal could be reached where not only could Karlsson be traded without adding a sweetener, that basically the salary retention would be the sweetener, but they could also get a half-decent return as well. Obviously, he would end up missing the Global Series, where the Penguins are heading over to Sweden, which, I believe he's had a chance to play in Sweden before, if I'm not mistaken. But, where will Karlsson go is the big question. Like I said, every time he seems to pop up in the rumor mill, there seems to be some linkage to, his former team, the Ottawa Senators. And I've said it numerous times, I'll say it again. I don't think that's going to happen. Not yet, at least. When his contract is up, if he wanted to sign cheaply for a year or two to finish out his career, maybe it happens at that point. But even at $7, $8 million, $6 million, I don't think Ottawa can do that. And I don't see the fit. Now, we'll see what happens on that front. But not only does the prediction here from Yohe about the Karlsson, but he also made mention of whether or not they would be a team to watch go after Mitch Marner. Obviously, we know Marner is going to be a hot commodity as well. We've talked about Marner in the past couple of days, and some teams outside of Toronto that would be pushing hard to get him. There's an argument to be made by some. I know Colby Armstrong, a former Penguin, obviously works a lot in hockey media. I'm sure you all know who Colby Armstrong is. He feels that the Penguins should absolutely be all over trying to bring Marner to Pittsburgh. Obviously, Marner's had a chance to train a little bit with Crosby during the summer, the past couple of years during some of their skates. We know there's an existing relationship there. Heck of a player. Could be a kind of player that's young enough to kind of reinvigorate the Penguin squad to maybe help them be a little bit better. But then there's this argument that, does he fit their timeline? Does he really, help them move the needle enough that they're going to be able to be, a solid playoff team? Or are we talking like, this is going to be a case where it's still going to not make enough of a difference. Does it make sense for Pittsburgh to have another big-time contract on the books if they're still going to be a team that's going to be needing to rebuild? At the end, when it's all said and done, Pittsburgh has a lot of holes. There's a lot of things they're missing. Marner's an interesting player. I really think he'll get attention from a lot of players, a lot of teams, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, Kyle Dubas, the GM who gave him his last contract, now the GM of the Penguins. I understand the connection. I can see the fact that he's trained a bit with Sid. But, yeah, I don't know that it really makes a ton of sense. The writer's kind of synopsis is that it probably makes more sense that the Penguins kind of acknowledge the fact that they're going to do what they can, but they're not going to be crazy to bring anybody else in. It's really a big name. If anything, they can unload Erik Karlsson's contract and kind of see what they can do to be, decent, but not, expectations being low. But I know Crosby, Malkin, Letang have a hard time with that. But it is what it is. They need so many things, I think, to really be a competitive team again that I'm not sure that it's going to take a while to get there. But Pittsburgh, Marner, it's an interesting thought. I'm not so sure that Colby Armstrong is on to something, though. In that case, some Montreal news. I know there's some reports, Renaud Lavoie, I believe it was, saying that Caden Gooley might miraculously make it back before the end of the regular season. Suggestion is he could return in around 3 weeks or so, which would mean that the last, I'm not sure how many, I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but, as that last push to try to get them into the playoffs, assuming that they're still in it. At that point, if they win enough games here in the next couple of weeks, that he could come back in the last, maybe week and a half, last handful of games to try to help get them over the top and get in. And there's also some speculation saying that Ivan Demidov might be able to join the Canadiens before the end of the season as well. The Ken Hughes is pushing hard, depending on when his season exactly finishes with the KHL, that if the timeline works out, that they're going to try to bring Demidov over to be a part of the Canadiens before the end of the season. I'm not so sure. I think that might be a little bit wishful thinking, but I'm sure that if he is able to, it makes sense for them because, he would be able to come over and sign and burn a year of his contract. It gets him to the, out of the ELC faster, helps him get to the bigger money faster. And if Montreal were able to get into the playoffs and squeak in there as wildcard 2 or something, well, they'd have themselves another weapon that's kind of, expected to be a big star coming in to help them out. It would be a great experience for him. If he would be able to make his debut. He wouldn't necessarily have to make his debut before the end of the regular season, but, he's a player that would be very interesting. But I wouldn't get your hopes up just yet. Obviously, it's something that's far from a guarantee, and I'm not surprised to find out they're trying, considering that they're actually in the playoff mix. But can you imagine if Demidov were able to come over before the season was over, and if they squeaked into the playoffs and he was able to play, it could be, like I said, not only a huge experience for him, but a huge boost for them as well. Maybe they would surprise some teams. Hard to say. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.